Yo, what is up? It is your boy Stephlyon. Today we're reacting to Star Citizen, the story so far.
Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. We have members of our esteemed narrative team, people who need no introduction, but I'm going to anyway. Dave and Will. Dave, how you doing?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
Good.
I've seen that dude before.
That's my intro.
I've seen him before in one of the videos.
Look, look, they're not all going to be winners. And
Wait,
most of them won't be.
Is dude holding a med pen? That is dead as a med pen, gang.
My name is Dave Haddock. I'm the narrative director here at
Narrative
CIG,
director.
and
Does he
work
make
on
like
Star Citizen, Squadron
missions?
42? Basically, work with the team to flesh out, build out the universe, write the dialogue, come up with characters, come up with storylines.
right, okay.
Item descriptions, all sorts of fun stuff.
Okay, so he does all that stuff.
And I'm William Weisbaum, assistant narrative director. I do what
Yo.
Dave does.
Low key, I feel like I've seen 100 actual characters in Star Citizen that look exactly like this man. Are y'all making your characters to look like him?
But just
Backwards
a
and
little
in
smaller.
heels.
Yeah.
That was so
Jumped
awkward.
in there. So this week's show, we put up a thread on Spectrum as we normally do and collected questions to help guide those chats, the chat questions, and to help explain to those who submitted questions in Spectrum and are like, well, why didn't they answer my question? It was voted up more. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between those questions and why the answer to almost all of them is pretty much the same. So some questions from the thing. Are there plans for any cutscenes in Star Citizen? I think we'd all love that kind of stuff.
Wait.
But those resources are currently tied up finishing Squadron 42.
Wait, cutscenes? Y'all want cutscenes? Cutscenes are basically loading screens, gang. Why would we want cutscenes? Like, I would rather, instead of cutscenes, like, I think some games like Halo and other games, they kind of do a thing where it's like, you are listening to the narrative while you're walking with the person who's giving you the narrative. So it's not much like a cutscene, but you're in the room with the person. They're either, like, I don't know, as scientists, they're in the lab doing their lab stuff while you're in this room. They're talking, you can hear them audibly, and then they give you your mission and they look at you and say blah, 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 and then now you're set off. I wouldn't so much as want a cutscene. And where would we put cutscenes in Star Citizen? In the live universe, where would we have cutscenes?
The cinematics team, the facial animation team, all that stuff like that. And so that priority has to be there because that game is one that absolutely requires
Squadron
that.
42 definitely see like
nice to
cutscenes
have
there.
kind of thing. This year is a big push towards performance optimization and bug fixing. So we're really trying to hold back on introducing new features.
That's
to
good,
EU.
I like that because at the end of the day, that is something people are asking for, which people would like, but it also takes away time from them to actually fix the game and do things that are going to push the game forward. And they're making the decision to say, we would love to do that, but we low-key want to stay committed to what we said, which is good. Sometimes you have to stay committed to the promise and not the things that people want right now, because the promise is a lot bigger. Because once you break that promise, people are going to be very mad. But if you don't add something that people are asking for that you never promised to add in that moment, people won't be that mad about it because it was never promised,
For at least a great portion of this year while we stabilize that. So again, something on the list, but is it more important than getting base building and crafting and our engineering finally and stuff like that? So it'll be farther down the line, stuff like that. I thought Pyro narrative had the planet strip mined. That's another thing where we had that story, that idea way back when the first version of Star Citizen where planets would never be landable.
That would have been a whole different freaking game. If I had come in when planets weren't landable, I would be freaking upset. Damn.
Kind of go to a unique landing zone and stuff, and now we have these fully realized 360-degree planets and stuff.
And that
so
makes it
with
crazy
that,
good.
You paired with where Planet Tech is at any given time. We're still in Planet Tech V4. We're developing Planet Tech V5 right now. It means that these planets have to be realized in the tech that we have at the moment and stuff like that. So narrative.
Should we go?
Yeah. I'm doing the ones. I don't want you to. I'm setting a thing. I don't want you to have to tell people.
Okay.
I don't want you to have to tell people.
I feel like this was done on like a Friday. Everyone was super tired from a long work week, and they're all just like, guys, can we just get through this, please?
So basically, a lot of the questions that are why don't you do this now, or seem like some really obvious choices like wouldn't it be so much better if you did this instead of this? The answer is almost always yes. And we agreed and we wanted to too. But the priorities of game development mean that
It
you know,
is what
other
it is.
things
No,
take
it is what it
priority
is.
and
Stick
other
to that.
things, have to come
Stand
first
on
and stuff like
that.
this. So,
Stand on that, man.
so with that, we're going to move. Wow, I'll go out really loud there for some reason. I'm sorry. I haven't done one of these in a while. So with that, we're going to jump into actual questions that can be affected by narrative and stuff like that. So there's a number of things going on. I'm going to start with probably our most recent one, just for recency bias, the regen crisis. Was introduced in 4.1.
Yes. The regen crisis, I was like, why would they introduce such a big thing and it's like that involves players in a way because we use regen, right? But then tell us in the release that nothing's gonna affect players, nothing happens. It just adds this alignment mind and the need for these new ores and materials to like fix the regen crisis, but it's not gonna affect players. I was like, why would you even do that? Like, why would you put that in?
Why don't you tell us what the regen crisis is?
So high level, 3 years ago, we had introduced this concept of regen. So it was a fictional way to justify why players are respawning
And can come back.
Came up with this lore behind it of the Ibram
I like
spheres
that,
and
man. I like
imprinting
that.
and stuff like that.
A lot of games just say, oh, you died, you're back. And it's like, why though? How though? How do I get obliterated and I get back? Like, even in GTA, I'm like, I just got destroyed by a freaking fighter jet in my car. Everything blew up. And you're telling me the hospital put me back together? How though? Why though? And those questions have been answered. But when I start playing Star Citizen, it's like, hey, this makes sense. My DNA cortex is put up somewhere. I have this insurance, and when I die, they regenerate me from my DNA cortex. And it's because I have this insurance and I put myself somewhere, which would make sense in the futuristic world where all things can be like digitalized and your DNA can be freaking replicated. It's like, it makes sense to be regen like that. And we have these, like the med beds are even, they look like regen chambers.
And actually did it sort of in the timeline of the fictional universe. So it happened while players were playing. We introduced the tech. We kind of showed how the Imperator and the other people were kind of reacting to this type of thing. But now basically, for whatever reason, the efficiency of the technology has been failing. Spoiler, it's not affecting the players, but for the majority of the NPC population,
not affecting the players.
Efficacy of the regen tech has been dropping significantly. So basically, death is now becoming a thing again. They thought they'd kind of conquered it, and now it turns out that they're not. So
But
currently,
why not
the
affecting
UEE
the players? Why not
and the
affecting
Imperator
us?
are basically trying to scramble to figure out a solution to kind of research and science their way out of this predicament to hopefully try to restore the tech to its former glory.
Like, as much as they tested the technology before it came out, once you increase the sample size to several billion, it started really quickly, like, kind of showing the cracks, and all of a sudden, all these people who thought they had their imprint safely stored away in a hospital, because everyone went out and got their imprints to protect them. It wasn't until they put it to the test months later that they realized that the imprints had gone bad. And so it's kind of like, you know, these small incidences of like, oh, this whole shipload of people got into a wreck and none of them came back, and like, that's weird. And then it started piling up to the realization of, oh, this technology is not as dependable as we first thought.
And you kind of ran into the thing too, where people were starting to, you know, effectively get kind of cocky of like, oh, it doesn't matter, I can go and I can fly my ship into a wall and bounce back and everything will be okay. So not only is the samples pool increasing, but people couldn't start abusing it basically over and over again. And again, that could kind of raise the failure rate.
Turns out a large percentage of the population doesn't take well to imprinting. Maybe they only have one imprint, maybe none. And it's not like the player population, just like the player population is the part of the universe who owns spaceships and goes on these great adventures, they're also the part of the population.
Even with that, I would like to see a lot more, civilians, like NPC ships and things flying around the place. Like, they can go to mining outposts, they can do some cargo, they can do some bounties and things. The fact that it's only players does take it down a little bit, but that's a lot of work to do, a lot of things to code and to make it work all the time. But I would like to see it. I would like to see that the world is a little bit more populated, that isn't just players, because then it adds a sense of like community and things going on, and things are not always just bare, and the airways are actually occupied by something, you know?
Obviously, we've just introduced it with 4.1. This is a story that will continue to be revealed and continue, and players will have more interactions with it and stuff as the months go by later.
But how does it affect
Yeah,
the
yeah.
player?
So, I mean, as we had sort of talked about in one of the Inside Star Citizens, the idea is like we're introducing these sort of ongoing storylines. And so this is sort of the inciting incident for what we're calling kind of our B story. The threat of the regen crisis is kind of looming, and it's sort of moving pieces around the board, whether it's corporate interests, government interests, stuff like that, to kind of make decisions that the players will get to kind of see as they kind of go throughout the universe. And there's going to be other ways that we're going to kind of start tying into this stuff a bit more, where players are going to be able to see the ramifications of it in the universe.
Yeah.
And hear NPCs discussing it and
Yes, you'll start to
you're
see
gonna
more
add dialogue
NPCs
from
coming online. Again,
NPCs, okay.
the answer to, I bring up Ancient Sales question because the answer to that is essentially the same as the answer for the first 3 questions of the show. It's basically those development resources need to become available for us in order to
then,
manifest
yeah,
this
put it
stuff
into the
more
game.
fully into the verse. It's one of those things where we shouldn't stop creating story.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like, just because they're not working to put the story into the game, does that mean they should stop creating the stories? That means they should stop writing more lore? And that would be stupid. Imagine we said, because we're not making any more Marvel movies, or we're not bringing them out as fast as normal, we should stop like writing comics and new comic versions and new worlds and new universes. We should just stop until we've caught up with the movies. It doesn't work like that. You kind of have the stuff down on paper for decades ahead before you actually implement them in. And I think every game does it. Every universe does this. So it's like, it's just a normal thing in the industry.
Just like anything else, we shouldn't stop adding mining to the game. We shouldn't stop adding salvaging or combat or whatever. And the tools that allow us to make those things better
Yeah.
will continue to develop as each patch goes on. The tools that will allow us to tell our stories better will continue to evolve as the patch goes on. Which the next question on here says, why doesn't the regen crisis affect the player?
Yes, that's the question. Why?
I mean,
He's
it's mostly
making
just
stuff up.
for the fact that the players do need to respawn. I mean, it's still, regen still factors into the original Death of a Spaceman thing. So there is still that idea that you know,
At some point it will fail.
your imprint kind of integrity will decay over time, and so we
right.
will still kind of feed it back into that original mechanic that Chris had
okay.
talked about all those years ago.
I guess in a way it does say, like, they could use it in a way where it's like, okay, this whole Shabbat happened and we don't know what's going on and people are dying, and then we help get it back on track. Players go out, do a line of mine, other things, bring those minerals, give it back to Rayari, the company who's trying to fix this issue, and then they fix it. But the way they fix it is, we can make your imprint work for a certain amount of time, and over the years, over your death, the integrity of your DNA will start going down. If they tie it back in like that, like there was a fix, but it wasn't a perfect fix. It was like a fix that made it stable. So every time you regen, you will regen, but there is a limit to your regen. If they tie it back like that, I feel like that's perfect. I feel like that is exactly what they gotta do.
Players need to respawn, otherwise.
You know, right now in the alpha state of our game and whatnot, we're being completely.
It'd be a
Did you
bit
just
too
say
fun.
We're
awful
being
state of the game?
candid. The game is plenty punishing enough in a lot of places without
No,
us
it's not.
influencing this.
No, it's
on top
not.
of that. Plus, again, that's new feature work and stuff, and as we've said since February of this year, like this isn't the year of too many new feature works. This is the year of stability and performances like this. Is the regen crisis a precursor to Death of Spaceman? Is this,
It has
when this
to be.
storyline wraps,
It has
will it
to be.
have some effect on Death of a Spaceman when it
Yeah,
gets
it has
introduced?
to be. There's no, you gotta,
Don't want to spoil.
it has to be. It has to be.
Stay tuned. Keep playing.
Yeah.
I tried. How does it make sense narratively that this major crisis with regen is largely ignored by the UEE, and they expect a bunch of randoms to solve it for them instead by knocking
that
down all
is
Hathor
true.
sites?
The government doesn't really care that this is like messing things up. Like, are people they know not dying and not coming back? Like, why do we have to do that, bro? Imagine no player wants to do online and mine. What happens then? Like, we just say, nah, we don't like those missions. We ain't doing that.
With the fleet, so yeah, like what is the UEE doing?
I mean, they're doing a lot. It's mostly the thing of like the effects of what they're doing are probably behind closed doors. They're happening in other systems and stuff like that. Again, we have
Yeah,
a-
We
don't
are
have
limited
that.
to the standard
Okay.
Pyro system right now.
yeah.
Right.
So they're certainly up to a lot. You know, trying to
But in their
incentivize
systems.
corporations to find a solution and incentivizing the population to help.
See, but that's the thing with having a game that's half baked and we are implementing these stories. It's like, you implement the story too early, and now we run into something like this where it's like, oh, they're doing something, but it's in a different system, blah blah blah. But we can't see that because we don't have those systems. And for us as players, we're gonna be like, oh, that's kind of stupid. How come we can't see the effects and nah. But it makes sense that in the lore they are doing things, but just in the actual universe that we're playing, the playable universe, we are limited to what we can see because we're limited to the systems that are actually in the game right now.
Corporations and scientific research and finding the resources and stuff like that. It's just, again, it's a player-centric experience.
Yeah.
So obviously
They're putting a lot of resources, the UE is putting a lot of resources into trying to fix this crisis. But the player isn't necessarily going to a UE research lab to seeing what they're doing. We're coming up with ways that the player can participate in this regen crisis.
And you will be, without spoiling, you will be going to some research labs, in the future. They may not be UE research lab, but you're gonna be seeing what other people, like we've heard what Rayari is doing. You're gonna start seeing what other
more than you. Rayari's not the only
corporations
one.
are doing to attempt to.
Okay, so the same way there's factions like in Pyro, there's the Headhunter, Sins for Prosperity, and whatnot. In this whole sequence, there's also factions of like companies and medical companies and research companies. Okay, that would be cool because that opens up so many more factions that we can work for. So like, let's say by the time Star Citizen comes out, it's like, oh, you want to do some health missions to help like the medical factions. There's so many you can choose from. Same way, like, and if they add more like bounty hunter factions, they add more freaking hauling companies, that would make sense that you have a choice of who you want to work for. Because in the real world, as this game wants to be like a sim game, in the real world, you have many choices of who you want to work for. Do you want to work for, I don't know, freaking Google or Microsoft or freaking anything, So I think that would be actually pretty cool.
Address.
Yeah, and the reason why Rayari has all these funds to spend on these rare resources that players are excavating right now is because the UE is putting extra funding through Addison into researching how to fix this crisis.
For the regen crisis, is the player going to be focused on helping address it, or will players also have the chance to investigate why it's happening in the first place?
Investigating would be cool, No, because imagine like they send you an investigation mission because like, oh, there's a wreck site in blah blah blah. You have to go there and you have to, I don't know, get DNA or something with your medical gun to see why it failed. You get the DNA, so you go to this place, you get the DNA. Let's say there's those freaking the Durzogs. What are they called? Copion. The Copions, they have to kill some Copions, blah, 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 get the DNA, bring it back to a station and hand it in, and then you get paid for that. That would be a cool mission, They can't even say much. What's going on here?
It's more like they're experiencing a crisis firsthand. We're going on a journey, and we really wanted the players to feel like they're part of this unfolding. And so whether there's going to be concrete answers or solutions at the end of this, we're going to leave it up because you're checking in with us halfway through.
Right.
So it's kind of a delicate position.
Well, not even halfway through. We barely got the first chapter. We barely got the first chapter of this out.
Well, and it's again, sort of that idea of like Will said, that players are experiencing this as it's happening. So we're kind of starting to lay a groundwork of story continuity.
He looks Canadian,
which is I think a really exciting thing that we haven't really been able to do much before. We've been having a lot of kind of Simpsons cycles where it's just sort of like the status quo gets kind of reset, but now we're actually kind of establishing that, if someone starts playing the game in 3 months, their experience to things, when talking to somebody who's been playing it this entire time is going to be a little different because the people who've been playing it are going to go, oh, well, you should have seen it, da-da-da, and there was this
when it started, right,
it used to work and now it doesn't work and blah, blah, blah.
I love that because, like, if it was a finished game, I would love that. That would be beautiful. If you weren't there, you didn't. Hey, you just gotta read the legends. Like, if you weren't in World War I, World War II, or even freaking, let's forget about the World Wars. Those are so long ago. If you weren't alive during COVID, or you were a little kid and you weren't in the world yet during COVID, you weren't there, gang. I'm gonna tell my grandkids, COVID, man, I was locked in the house for 2 years, bro. We couldn't go outside, bro. There was police on the streets, bro. Like, we have to have a freaking passport to walk your dog, gang. You had to show you had the needles to go to that grocery store, gang. That's what I'm gonna tell my kids. I'm gonna tell my kids, like, yo, it was crazy, man. It was blackout, bro. We ain't got no energy, no power, nothing, bro. We were stuck in the house. You have to be there to know the truth about it. So I feel like it would be great if it was a fully finished game. But the fact that it's not a fully finished game, there's a lot of audience who might have been really interested to see all these things unfold, who won't get to because the game's not finished yet. It's not out on the public market per se. So there's going to be a lot of people who are going to miss the experience and can't say, well, the game was officially released in 2027. If you were there when it was fully released, the amount of stuff that was going on, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you came in like 7-8 months later. Oh, you missed some stuff, but don't worry, you can catch the next stuff. But now it's like you missed stuff from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, but the game wasn't even finished by then. You know, it's kind of weird.
I mean, this year's focus on doing these regular patches, monthly patches, have really been interesting us from a narrative perspective on how we can tell our story. Because normally, like we're unfolding, previously we were doing the quarterly patches and stories were unfolding in a much greater amount of time, and how the players experienced it was kind of very different. But now we have a much more regular cadence, and so slowly like doing these little crumbs as we go and building into something bigger and bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've had
They can roll it
we
out
had 4
slower.
patches in 4 months. December, January, February, March. It's with Invictus being in the middle of May and whatnot. There's a 6-week gap instead of a 4-week gap there, and then our plan is to continue on that. So that's May patch, June patch, July patch, August patch, September patch. So you'll see drops of this going through throughout the year. That's all part of this major change, this content-driven,
So they have a really
less
constant
feature-driven,
schedule planned ahead.
directive for this year. In the chat says, why focus on storylines while still in alpha? And will any of these storylines repeat once 1.0?
That's
or
what
full
I'm
library?
saying. That's what I'm saying. Why are we focusing on these great freaking storylines, but we don't get to showcase it to everyone possible? Only the people that are here now. We are still so fresh in this. Like it's still got so many like years before it might even come out as a finished game. Why are we giving all these beautiful storylines, these beautiful things, without having the full game out? It sounds weird when you think about it.
Release happens. You mentioned it. You mentioned earlier, it's like when you introduced regen and the Ibrahim spheres, it was in time and place 3 years ago. And whatever. These are story moments of where we are
In the
now
universe,
in our sliding
Like,
time
will they
scale.
strip it back
So
and start fresh
it's-
again?
these aren't things that just repeat.
Yeah, but they could potentially
it's
repeat
also
it.
that, yeah, I mean, it's also a thing too. I mean, some of the stuff I think, we had things like Siege of Orison, which were single events that we would repeat because it was a fun game experience and stuff like that. So I think it'll probably always be kind of a balance of that.
Yeah.
Like A Line in Mine is kind of an evergreen location. It's meant to.
It's not an event.
It's not an event.
It's a
for-
permanent
Yeah, right,
addition
yeah,
to
exactly.
the.
with repeatable content that will kind of
Yeah.
live on.
Yeah, it's no different than
Past
any
them.
other MMO. When you play the level 10 quests and whatnot, they happen much earlier in the ongoing saga, but they're always.
Yeah, but they're always stable. You can always, every new player gets to experience the level 1 to level 10 missions, the level 10 to level 20 missions. Everyone gets to experience it. The only things you won't experience all the time is the event. If there's a special event that only happens once and it's done, you don't get to experience that. But in Star Citizen, almost everything is a special event that they're never going to get to experience,
So this content is designed to always be there.
Yeah.
Yes, I think for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, for the most part.
In the groundwork that we're laying with this new content, even if there's a story mission attached to it, we're taking the content itself and figuring out how to reuse it in a repeatable,
Okay, so they're
playable
going to take the
experience.
story away, but keep the
So there might be
mechanics.
more event type stuff coming this year, but anything that we do, we're hoping to build into so that the players will keep getting to enjoy and have fun with.
Yeah, but
I think
But I don't know, stripping away the story from certain things kind of just like, it's like, yeah, you can say, yeah, the first time this came out was because the regen was failing, so we have to do this. But now you're just kind of doing it. It's like not having the story there kind of takes away of like some of the drives, like, oh, this is why we're doing it,
I think what Adam might have been asking is this the 1.0 story or is this something else? This is something else.
This is something else.
This is our 2025 storyline.
Ah, okay. So this isn't even the 1.0 story. This is just like the ground lore, like the history. Because like if you play games like ESO or even the GTAs, the Red Dead Redemptions, or any MMO like World of Warcraft, you play WoW and like LOTRO and things of that nature. You start at a certain point, but then normally when the game starts, you get those like cutscenes that give you the lore. That's where they could put cutscenes in at the start of the game, where it gives you the lore, like a brief description of the lore that happened before your time, and now you are here. So I don't know, the human race started a war, and then now they destroyed Earth and it was uninhabitable, and they went into the space, and blah blah blah. You could do all those kind of things and say all the things that happened. They conquered death and they created regen. Then at one point the regen started to fail, and then humans had to band together to find the solution for this. And then now it's like, now here we are in blah 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 year. Everything is stable and you've entered the universe. And now it's your turn to go rule, explore, conquer, find, mine, salvage, and do all of this. There you go. You have started. Welcome to Star Citizen 1.0. Hey yo, that would actually be kind of, that would be kind of fire. I ain't gonna lie to you.
And to his question, why? Why tell a story when you're in alpha?
Because it's going to set up the future.
Part of it is this is giving narrative a chance to be in alpha as well. We've been learning so much in this past
and they get
4
to learn
months
and
of now that the mission
here.
tools are in, now that the streaming content tools in, that we've been able to really ramp up how we deliver. And you're going to be seeing that more this year. And we've run into issues.
Now, exactly. Like, think about it. Like, imagine a game that's like going through alpha and everything, and they release. And when they release the game, they have to add these new stories and things and all these new elements. A lot of game get events wrong. A lot of game gets like new story being added to the game very, very wrong. And people hate it because it's just not delivered properly. But imagine all the time and knowledge and skills they will develop putting a story in now that is essentially the legends of the game, and getting to put it in with the game in alpha mode, right? And then by the time they get to full release, they have so much knowledge and they have a literal blueprint of how to put these things into the game and make it good, make it work, not break the game, not break the idea of the game and the lore of the game. That, we cannot complain about that.
That we've been able to sort out with this earlier content and explore it as we build up to our 1.0 content.
Yeah.
Giving the narrative wrapping to why you're doing something makes the doing something
worth it,
a little bit more engaging.
Exactly.
So part of it is again, in this push for sort of greater engagement in the experience.
Give us a reason.
Let's add a story to it.
That's
so
what I was saying.
Hey, we introduced this thing.
Go do it.
Go have fun.
Yeah.
There's a reason around
doing
it, driving players to go.
Yeah.
Why not add another layer?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
it's
if
a
you
little
can,
bit
why not? You know,
of a thank you to the players who are playing it right now.
Yeah.
You're playing in alpha, you're experiencing our
all
game
the
in development.
bugs, all the issues.
As part of that, you're getting to experience the regen crisis, which players who hop in to the bandwagon 3 years from now won't
get to do.
So,
Yeah,
good for you.
There's a lot of things that I've missed. Like the game has been out since like 2013, 14, and I've been looking at it, known about the game, but didn't believe in the game until 2024. Now I've only been here like 7 months. I missed like over a decade worth of things. That's my fault. I didn't believe in the game. Like, yeah, okay, I was a little kid. I was like 12 years old. Like, I couldn't really have a computer that could run the game. But like, I've missed those things, and I'm coming in now. I get to carry on from here. But until 1.0, I've lived all of this. I could say I lived this while it was still in alpha. And then anyone from there on, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
You said we're learning this, and I don't think that gets. I mean, I've been doing this for a decade now, but I don't think I'll ever get tired. When I end the show, say, "What are we learning this week?" It's not. I'm not just speaking on behalf of the player and whatnot. Game development is this process of learning. And this process,
exactly.
We've been learning for the last
technology
13
is
years
just going crazy
what this
right
game
now.
that we're making is.
Yeah,
you know,
there's so many things
new
are
people
changing.
come in with new ideas, new technologies come on. We didn't think we were going to be able to have like 360 degrees fully realized planets and stuff like this.
The new technology is
and
crazy.
we learn as much about how the game is changing and how to make this game every month as players learn alongside us, and that's the virtue of ISC and SCL and stuff like that. It's all of game development is about learning in one way, shape, or form, not just for the players, but for the people who are making the game. The other big addition recently is our first Banu, our first alien of any kind.
Bruh.
So excited.
I am so
Tell me
happy
about
I got to
Wicklow.
meet an
Who's
alien,
a
same as everyone else.
All right, moving. Tell me more about Wicklow.
Yeah, so Wicklow is a new addition to Stanton's system. He is a a fresh expatriate of the Banu Protectorate who has basically set up a shop. He divested from his Suli and has traveled around and just he is fascinated and loves human culture, and so he decided to go set up a shop
war,
in
disease,
Stanton system where he
killing
will
each other?
happily trade stuff, build stuff, send you on food lunch orders. He's great.
Why now? Why, where did this idea that this was the time to bring this first come from? What can you remember?
We were charged with, from a design side, they wanted, this person who would take in a random collection of resources from the player who didn't have like a set style or anything, because basically this is like tier -1 of crafting almost. Like when crafting comes online later on, you'll be taking those recipe lists and you'll be filling them and you'll be putting them into your own crafting station.
Okay, so this is kind of teaching us how, that is so smart. It's teaching us how fabricating and constructing our own things is going to happen. We're going to have to get these recipe lists and bring them to our own bases and put them in. So that's so smart. I didn't think of it that way.
Things aren't ready yet.
Yeah.
But we still kind of wanted that gameplay loop for the players to start experiencing it.
Go find materials, bring the materials, turn the materials into a new thing.
Into a thing. And so this is the person who's kind of doing that through this. And so we were kind of thinking of like,
I've got to start doing those missions.
I've got to start doing those missions. We've been really wanting to get aliens because the Star Citizen is supposed to be populated by aliens, so we've been waiting for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we kind of
I was kind of weirded out when I saw no aliens. I was like, even on the moons, I'm on the moon. Like, why is there no like alien creatures trying to kill me with like tentacles and things? You feel me? Like there should be like some giant humanoid crabs or something. You feel me?
Of course, like the answers at the very beginning, like we have to implement it as far as we can with the tech and resources that we have right now. Yeah. Obviously, a fully P-capped Banu running around saying, "Hey, what's over?" It's like it's weird. We're not quite ready to do that because those resources are tied up with that.
Well, it's just the I mean, we P-capped him. I mean, he is fully P-capped. But yeah, like
so he can do
what
everything.
is the animation rig, the walk
full
cycle,
custom rig for a Banu
is something that hasn't been made. I mean, again, even the sculpt from it was relatively quick because there had been sort of development on it, but not a real intensive like game ready asset made. So
I mean, I think some very ingenious people found a way into Wicklow's room and discovered that Wicklow wasn't quite all there yet. So
wow,
for those not in the know, he's
so the hackers went in and found that this guy's not even finished.
Currently a head and a torso.
He's a head
and a torso. His desk talking to you. But that's going to develop more as we get more time to put him in. And hopefully one day he'll be walking around his emporium interacting with you as our long-term goals.
The items Wicklow asks for don't seem very thematic. Can you explain why Wicklow wants these particular commodities? Seeing as he's a collector, I feel it would be more fitting if he requested rare loot from the loot pool or something like the artifacts and war medals you can find. For the ship rewards, you should have to turn in an in-game purchased one or an exact hangar ship. Basically, this person's got a lot of ideas. But what, basically the question is why is Wicklow after these things that he is and not collectible items to add to his menagerie?
Because he's also a fabricator. He's not just a collector. He's also, producing his own items, and these rare resources are something that he desired, or maybe someone else wanted to trade with him. There's kind of several excuses. It's also partially in metagaming wise. It's the timing of his release is with the Mine and Line event, so we wanted
to add
something to tie it together with that. So it was kind of convenient.
It's the intention with each patch that the things that he's looking for and asks for will change stuff.
Right.
In fact, in 411, we're introducing a guild script, a different like physicalized currency.
It's also important to remember too that and this was one of the kind of beautiful benefits of him being a Banu is that he's kind of eccentric. So to me, the thought of him going, "Hey, I want you to bring me like 30 Pips cans, some Karenite, and a burrito," like made sense for him because it's just like he's kind of weird that way.
I mean, even for a Banu, I think he's on the eccentric end of things because he's living alone out in human space without a Suli. So like it's kind of.
And for a little behind the scenes, I'll add. like one of the suggestions of this person was like, for vehicle rewards, you should be able to turn in one of the ones you've stolen and get it like this. He goes, we actually did look into that. We ran into a technical issue where the freight elevators couldn't destroy an item. So you load something in the freight.
So they want, that would make sense. Imagine you steal a vehicle or whatever, you can bring it to him, it'll destroy and replicate it for you. But then I think we'd need the ship tier. So let's say you go out there and you steal a tier 2 ship. When you remake it, it goes to a tier 1. Because right now it wouldn't be essentially fair that people can just go out and get a bunch of ships added to their ship list at this point where insurance isn't in the game properly. I feel like it'd be okay as long as if that ship gets destroyed, it's gone for good. It's not just added to your, unless you insure it or something, it's not just added to your fleet. You know what I'm saying?
We actually tested, we actually intended to do something like that. You'd load it onto the thing, it would come down and come up with something else, but it kept coming up with the existing item, and you just kept duplicating stuff. So we inadvertently created our own asset duplication thing. So it's one of those things where it's like that aspect of it was not able to make in the initial release, but it is something we're still looking at.
They're still working on it. Okay, that's not bad.
And for what and how it will be implemented, you'll find out when it's ready. We're thinking the same things they're thinking. We're having the same conversations they're having. And the answer almost always to why didn't they just do that?
You're not having a unique experience.
Wasn't ready.
You don't have a unique
if we waited until every single thing was ready, we wouldn't be running a live environment in the middle of our development. We've taken a break from the fight for Pyro at the moment. So let's
but how does
we
that
get back
continue
into that a
on?
little bit in this next Invictus patch. What's happening in Pyro with these 3 factions right now? Where are we at in their story at the moment?
But they're continuing that. I really like that.
Well, I guess just to fill in the fight for Pyro is we have the introduction of a new group called the Frontier Fighters, who have
slicers.
who have a different take on the Pyro solution, right? Because we've established for a long time the Citizens for Prosperity, who are out there who are like, if we just resettle Pyro, we can turn it around. If there's more economic development here, then the UEE will care more, then we'll get more resources, more funds, and we can make it safe, and then make the neighboring system safer. And that's their plan. And the Frontier Fighters are like, no, that's going to take too long. You've been trying to do this. All you're doing is sending resources in there that outlaws just steal. You're making the situation worse. Our solution is burn it to the ground. It's called Pyro, let's burn it up. And so they've come in here and to kind of get the ball rolling, it turns out they pretended to be a Pyro outlaw group called the Slicers. They did a huge terrorist attack on the Stanton system. And then they're like, come on everyone, let's get those Slicers, and trying to get the whole system agitated. Because they saw what happened when Xenothreat did their attack. They were like, this was good, but not good enough. Let's do it better.
Well, I don't know about the terrorism now.
The Uber racists did a good job, but they didn't go far enough.
Well, as far as agitating Stanton into action, because Pyro is one of those problems that's so big that it feels easier to ignore. Like, so it's easy enough to be like, it's there, it's fine, and just deal with like, oh, we'll catch this one shipjacker, we'll catch this one outlaw, but it doesn't help the larger problem of an outlaw system.
So how did the idea of the Slicers / Freedom Fighter, Frontier Fighters, come about?
Conversation with design, they were basically looking for
I'm a headhunter.
They had built a sort of series of missions that were supposed to kind of build up towards the release of Pyro system. There was that initial thing of the like, oh, you can pick from these 3, and then suddenly they wanted to make it shift to 2, so we had to kind of figure out, like, look at kind of their outline of how they wanted to do things and figure out, like, all right, well, how can we phase it from 3 to 2, and basically kind of hit all of the markers that they needed to hit, and then tell a story that could be fun, that would sort of, again, the goal was, hey, Pyro's coming out, we want people to go to Pyro, so how do we incentivize people
to go to Pyro,
to go storming into Pyro? And it's been one of the things we'd actually years ago had talked.
So the thing is, they wanted people to go because the Frontier Fighters felt like they're going to save. We had the whole thing where the Slicers came to Stanton, so obviously they thought if we say the Frontier Fighters are going to kill those people and stop them from invading Stanton. So I made a moral choice. I made the right moral choice.
Talked about a similar thing for Xenothreat as well. of them taking over like the jump point station and then fleeing into Pyro. And so it was basically the Navy gave you the go ahead to go in. So it was like a bunch of missions for players, but it's the same type of thing. Like, you know, figure out a storyline that would ultimately culminate with the invasion of Pyro. And so we sort of circled around this idea of the Frontier Fighters being a much more hardline version of CFP, basically, and then, you know, and talking with design, kind of came up with this hook of turning them into the villains, basically. So turning Frontier Fighters into the bad guys, hence why you had to...
So they weren't supposed to be the bad guys. They weren't supposed to be the terrorists. They made them. They were supposed to be the good guys. And they didn't change their good guy story.
fall into CFP or headhunters.
Looking at the questions in that thread, I think sometimes there's this idea that everything starts with narrative and everything, you know, it's like everybody else in the company has to do what you decide the story is, and that's not the case.
So they have to create
it's not the case. This is a collaborative thing, and many people have a voice. That's something that happens quite a lot. Designers come and say, we would like to make this kind of content. We would like to do something like this.
Then how do we do it?
Can you help us find a way to fit that into the universe that you've created? And that's a big part of what you guys do day in and day out.
Nah, but I think that goes beyond even just making story narratives and missions and things. I feel like it also goes involved in, oh, we need to get these bugs fixed. We need to get these mechanics working. And I think people forget that, some people can't do their job unless some other part helps them. And if those people aren't free to help them, their job can't be done. If those people are taken up doing something else, things are going to come out a little bit slower. It's not just for the missions and for the narrative. It's other things as well. Like, people need people to be free to help them complete something and get something out into the game.
Why can't we stay on the freedom fighters side? Why don't you let us be the genocidal?
We're not
terrorists who
genocidal.
wanna
Oh
just
my God.
Wholesale slaughter
We're
thousands
not.
and thousands and thousands of
We are
innocent
not.
people.
We are good people.
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of answered your own question.
yeah. The Frontier Fighters switching into a pure enemy faction. I know some people aligned with them and they wanted to keep working for them, but our idea was always to have them as an ongoing enemy faction for the rest of the story we're telling.
Okay, I don't want to be Frontier Fighter no more.
You know, going forward,
changed.
Not every faction that you encounter in the game is going to be one that the players can actively work for. And there are these purely hostile factions, and we need them from gameplay reasons. Is that as the reputation system slowly evolves, we want a similar experience for players who always can arrive in a location and have someone to attack or who is attacking them without having to.
That would make sense, because if you can work for everyone, it's like there's no one consistent, like, example, the Ninetales. Imagine you could essentially work for the Ninetales. How do you, when you have rep with them, how do you go to a bunker or whatever, do a bunker mission, and you have to kill the Ninetales? And if not the Ninetales, who are you going to kill? The security there? You're going to get a crime stat now. So they need an active, singular faction or whatever that people can always. So I get that makes a lot of sense.
Worry about how the reputation system is going to change how they behave or the dialogue lines, because there's a high cost with that. We do want to have some reputation-based gameplay where the player's alignment will affect the outcome or how they experience these things. But that's going to be much more controlled.
It has to be within reason.
Exactly.
It has to be within technical reason. Has to be within a feature reason. Has to be within
gameplay reason and experience
time.
reason.
You know, the amount of time that we can invest into creating different variations. I mean, everybody that's ever played a video game that has branching storylines know you can only have so many different branches and stuff. Otherwise, you just it just goes on and on and on. It becomes impossible. I say that, and then Baldur's Gate 3 was like, hold my beer. You know, shout out to Baldur's Gate 3. But even there are limits, and that's like this. So it's limits in time, limits in technology, limits in functionality, and our own desires. It's I don't think
like, how much do you
we're not
want,
making a game where you can do absolutely every single thing
in the universe. Exactly.
There's a game
the
we
scope
learn
for that
every
is
week,
crazy.
the game that we want to make. We evolve, Chris evolves, you guys evolve, we all have different ideas every week and whatever, and we start to think, you know, this is the kind of game we want to make and stuff as we see players react and stuff like this. And it's not to say that
And that's one thing that I love. Since I've become a part of this whole Star Citizen community and the verse, it's a thing of a lot of game bend completely to the will of the people, the players. And it's like, but we're not creating the game. Players don't create the game. Someone with a brilliant idea comes together, gets a band of people, starts the company, and creates the game, and we enjoy it. If you bend completely to the player's will, which side? Whose will do you, like, which players? And that's the thing, we need to let developers develop the game they want to play, because if they develop something that they find fun, I guarantee we will find it fun too. And I love the fact that I see Star Citizen kind of doing that. They kind of have this idea and they're building on their idea. Yeah, they're taking input here and there from players, but they're building on their personal idea. And that's beautiful because it will make such a unique game. Because other players will play 10 other games and come up with this idea, but it's just another idea they stole from a different game. And Star Citizen's like, nah, we don't want that game. We want to create our own little thing. You feel me?
Maybe someday down the road, you're not going to be able to join space Nazis or whatnot. But at this moment, where we're at,
Well, I don't say no.
that's my point. But at this moment, where we're at, it's like, no, that's not something we're really looking for.
The conversation about the guilds that we outlined in sort of the Road to 1.0 thing, like there's going to be a criminal guild. Like there are.
Oh, there is? Okay.
If you are looking for that type of
Gameplay?
you know, underworld working for the dark side type, you know, characters and interactions and factions and stuff like that.
An Assassin's
we have
Guild?
that. Like you will be able
wanna be an
to
assassin.
work for those people.
The factions will ideally have larger differences from each other so that you're not just shuffling back and forth.
But I would have liked, I think, I'm not sure, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm not really, like, well versed in this. It's just from what I've kind of seen. I would have liked if the bounty hunt, like, let's say, like the bounty hunters, I would have liked if they had a different faction. I know there's, like, Foxwell and, like, Blackjack. I would have liked if each system, like, if I'm going from each planet system, like, if I'm going from Crusader to R-Corp, they have different ones that are completely different. And if you want to max out your actual full reputation system, you have to max it out with each like planet systems, like factions. I don't know if it's there yet because when I go to, like, I think it just says Bounty Hunter. Even if I go from like my home stations at R-Corp to Crusaders, it just says Bounty Hunters. And if I go to Loreville or whatever, it still says Bounty Hunters. I would have liked to say that there's a different one that pops up, and to max it all out, you have to do each individual, like, it will like allow people to go live in different places just so they can max it out, giving you more time to play. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if that's how it already works, let me know. But I feel like it doesn't work like that yet.
Between like 20 identical delivery companies, like for 1.0, we want each, you know, company that you work for to have its own vibe, its own voice,
differences and things
and
like
those
that,
are going to
yeah.
be the ones, and for you to grow along with them from system to system. So
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I don't want it to be from system to system. Like, let there be a little, like, let there be different ones that are all, they're essentially going to be the same, but they have like different missions and things like that. Obviously, different missions, but they're going to be like different choice of who you want to work for. Because you might not want to work for, I don't know, something shipping company. You might want to work for a Z shipping company. If you don't have that option, you're going to be working for something shipping company all the time. You might not want to do that, and it's like they're going to be the exact same missions across the board, and it's weird.
the factions that we previously thought was going to be Pyro only or Stanton only are going to expand out into the other systems, so you can have a continuous experience as you travel through the star systems. Like,
I get it, but I would like to see a few more.
We're dancing around a lot of things because of what's coming later this year. And so, like, it's like,
So there's good stuff coming out later
like,
this
you know,
year.
it's been the struggle of these kind of shows for more than a decade now.
So new things?
We want to share, but we don't want to spoil. And especially this year's been a big focus on in-game discovery, probably more than any previous.
Bro, I don't know. Like, I've done a lot of in-game discovery with Star Citizen since I started playing in October, and I'm like, I love that. I love having to figure things out in the game. Like, yo, that's why I'm playing the game. I want to learn and figure it. It's beautiful.
A year, and that's affected everything from ISC to SCL. It's why there are fewer shows. It's why we don't spoil every single thing. In 2 weeks, you're going to see the show about 411, and there's some rather sizable things in that show that we're leaving out because, again, we want folks to discover.
Bro, that's beautiful. I love that approach. I love that approach, man.
Sometimes, I shouldn't say a lot of folks, but some folks sometimes forget that the product of CIG is not these shows. Why do criminal groups like to live in piles of trash?
Why is Pyro a freaking dumpster fire? Quite literally. Why? It hurts hurts my heart. That's why I don't want to live there. Even the clouds look like poop.
It was a good thing. I think it's a strong visual indicator to players that they're entering an area that's...
Bro, okay. That's a strong visual. Shut up. Look at all the mafiosos. Look at all the freaking kingpins. Look at the Yakuza. Those are criminals. Hardened criminals. Do they look like they're hardened criminals? Did El Chapo look broke like he was a hardened... Okay.
seedy and unwelcoming is to see trash littering around.
Those
I think
are
a lot of times
degenerate.
when
That's
you're
degeneracy.
fighting for your life, you maybe have more important things to worry about than picking up your protein bar wrapper.
Yep.
So
How come gangs manage to borrow so many large military ships like the Idris every year? These manufacturers should fire their heads of security.
well, I mean, just look how many Polaris's are flying around right now.
But yes, they should. Their security system is
Has
really
wait,
horrible.
that's
the
true.
role
How
of
do
head
they
of
get
security
it?
even been invented?
If there's no Aegis in the game, how do they steal one?
There's some fictional reason
They're
security
just all
chiefs-
really gullible. They just walk in and they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I
We
supposed
need
to take
that
that ship
Aegis
out." Like,
right
oh,
there.
okay. And just
There's some suspension of disbelief that needs to happen to like how many times will Orison be taken over and sieged before they would just shut the city down. So it's
We've had a lot of focus on the Pyro gangs recently. This person would like to ask if you plan to focus on each of the 4 Stanton corporations a little more and their stuff.
sure.
no comment.
Okay.
They're gonna do something. They're gonna
That's
do
gonna
something.
lead. I'm gonna go right into the next question. We have introduced relatively recently, within the last 6 months,
I mean,
with
everything's
Foxwell.
relative.
Yeah.
Foxwell, yes. I have been seeing new things that came with those Foxwell people. I haven't done anything yet. I don't know what they are. I think they have mercenary missions. I'm gonna start them just to see what they are because I think they're new. They weren't there since I started in 3.24, so I'm pretty sure they're like a new company, and they're doing. Their missions might be totally different. Where would they send this? Actually, I need to start that.
Foxwell is now, this new. I guess they're a PMC. Is that how you would classify them?
I would call them a security company.
Security,
I don't
exactly.
think
Yeah,
they're-
security.
They're solid
Security,
enough to be a PMC.
security,
Okay.
bro.
So Foxwell is out there now giving missions. They seem to be taking some of the role that Crusader and Hurston Security would have in the past. Is that accurate? What's
Yeah, it's part of our 1.0 alignment as we head towards that goal of, for the major landing zones, it was causing potential issues for players to be able to earn negative rep with these companies and seeing
Crusader,
how, I worked for Crusader Security, I pissed them off, I attacked them. What does that mean for me accessing the content in Crusader now? And it had a lot of knock-on ramifications. It was really complicating things having the 4 corporations who control these planets also be
Also have their
reputation
own
factions.
reputation factions.
So
Okay.
we're going to slowly start changing towards them being more local factions where you can work for them and earn money for them sometimes, but not necessarily keep a long-term reputation with them. Instead, those beginning security jobs are going to be given
But then how do you lose rep or gain rep if you're not going to be working for them long term?
out by Foxwell. And sometimes the 4 corporations hire Foxwell as a contractor to do the work for them.
you talked earlier about being able to continue your relationships with some of these people
Yeah.
as you progress to different systems. Again, at CitizenCon, we revealed
they're
the first
basically
5
just a
systems. After
subcontractor.
Pyro
Yeah.
is Nyx. After Nyx is Castra. I remember that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after Castra, Terra. So a relationship with Crusader when you're in Castra doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but Foxwell is somebody that you can build.
But that's what I was saying. So I guess what I was thinking, where each place had their own individual companies, was a thing, and they just removed it. But because I'm still so fresh, I didn't realize. Because I'm thinking about it. I was like, I think I used to do Crusader security when I lived in Orison. Then I did Area 18 security for a different. So they actually removed that, and that was actually a thing in the game.
The relationship with, and they can take with you as you progress.
Yeah, that was one of the one of the earlier ideas was you're going to have to rebuild your reputation. And we kind of decided that's not what we're gearing for. So we want that.
But I would have liked that.
intact.
I would have liked having to rebuild every time you go to a new planet system. Rebuild your reputation. Every time you go to a new system and rebuild. I would have liked that because then it gives you things to grind for. Because if it's all consolidated into one, yeah, you can grind to the highest rep, but then I was like, where do we go from here? Like, and if you do your like, well, I don't know, maybe 400 missions, 500 missions, and you get to max rep, where do you go from there? You can't say, I'm bored of living in this system now. Let me go somewhere else and start my rep building again and experience the new missions there.
Continuation across systems. So yeah, you start working in Foxwell in the Stand system, and you'll be able to continue working for them in Castra and Terra and stuff like that until you graduate up to a higher tier of security company who wants to work with you now. So.
Okay, that makes so much sense. Okay. So Foxwell is essentially the... Okay, right. Okay. Let me break it down so I can understand it. Foxwell is basically just an agency, right? Okay, right. Let's say in the real world, there's an agency that does contracting, right? And if you want a job, you go to the agency, you give them your resume, and then they'll get you jobs in that field. That's what Foxwell is. So they get the smaller contracts to get you part-time or like seasonal job or whatever, and they get those contracts and they hand them out to people who are in their logs, and they hand you out. You got you get your mission. Then at one point you go to this company, you work for this company from Foxwell. Let's say you got sent somewhere, you work for them, and they're like, you have such a high reputation with Foxwell. You're actually really good. We like what you did here. Come work for us. We are this huge company that have huge missions. Come work for us, and you signed this contract, and now you're one of our contractors. But you have to work your way up now from us. So Foxwell is the smaller, tiny company that distributes you to the bigger one, and at some point, the bigger one's gonna poach you and say, "Yup, you are now part of our work." That makes sense. Okay, I retract everything I said. I like that.
Why aren't there more non-combat focused storylines?
Oof, that is a good question.
So, granted, we've only been introducing...
Because I have been saying that the last few things I've seen them add in Star Citizen is very combat PvP focused. What about the PvE players who don't like... I'm in between. I'll do PvE, PvP. I don't care about that because I'm normally a PvP player, so PvP doesn't really bother me or like stress me out. What about the people who just do PvE? Why are they not getting anything that's just based for them? Like, everything seems to be combat focused, either FPS, dogfighting, and protecting yourself against pirates and piracy, and it's been weird.
Seeing this new story initiative just started this year.
Yeah.
And we're still in the 4th month of this year. So it's not like we've...
Well, technically it even started, I think, two months. I think we're in month 2 of the storyline.
I would say with the start of Pyro and stuff like this, with the fight for Pyro and stuff. So we're really only 4 or 5 months into this initiative here.
Well,
but the missions have all been very combat. The story has been very combat focused. Even a line of mine, well, the regen question thing. The first thing you do is go to a big central sandbox where you're forced to fight with a bunch of people.
The science story, the regen crisis story, is actually the non-combat one because it's science. It needs resources and
But it is
and
combat.
the Frontier Fighters one, which is sort of the A story, that is obviously much more focused around combat. So, but within each of them, obviously, there's...
Okay, that was a really stupid explanation right there. Like, it is combat. You're going to Hathor locations. The first thing you do, go to a Hathor location. Ninetales are there. If Ninetales aren't there, other players are there. If other players aren't there, worms are there. Then you go from the Hathor locations to the orbital mining facility. If you're not fighting other players, you're fighting NPC ships. If you're not fighting NPC ships when you land, you're fighting NPCs. If you're not fighting NPCs because they're all dead, you're fighting players in there. Then you go into the building, you're fighting players, NPCs. You launch the laser, you spool the laser, you get the launch codes, you go down to the ground. Now you are fighting other players who are contesting with you to get into the cave. It is very, very combat focused. Even I can see that, and I like the combat.
There's going to be opportunities to do both combat and non-combat.
It's all combat, gang.
I mean, again, like I think a lot of the systems for combat have already been sort of proven out. So I think that they're from, you talk to the mission team, but I think they're a bit easier to set up. So it's faster.
But then you can't say it's not combat.
Adding a lot of combat stuff versus just mining stuff. But as far as I understand it, like the hope is that we want to have like a very nice balance between the two. That if you don't want to fight, you don't have to fight.
Supply or die, which was kind of a refrain from that A story, a little denouement where you take a break and we introduce thing that could be done completely without combat. You were able to mine your way to completion and get all the rewards, or salvage your way to completion. Now,
it was away from combat, but it was a way that piracy did show its head. A lot of piracy did show its head, which was the only thing I was like, But again, they didn't 100% intend that. there's just allowance for that. That's the difference there. There's allowance for it, but it isn't intended, you know?
What other players allow you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's
that-
not
so,
that.
so
player's
be
gonna
it.
play.
That
That's
is
not
the universe
CIG.
that we're making. But it was not exclusively combat.
Combat,
right there.
yeah. So I
Combat
can agree with
oriented.
that
There was a
one,
path
100%.
for combat and a path
Yeah, 100%
where you could avoid it. I think we'll see more of those things as we go on,
we go,
providing
okay.
alternate paths.
Yeah, then
to
things like that, you can say it's
as the
not
region
combat, yeah.
crisis continues, there will no doubt be opportunities for some major combat and stuff, but there will be also ways to contribute that are not.
No combat.
We've talked a lot about obviously story and narrative and stuff.
Hopefully.
And the limitations that we have as far as how we can tell stories and stuff like this. We are making some progress with that this year. We do recognize that, you know, while data pads will always be they're a part of every video game, every major story narrative video game I think I've played in the last 20 years. We do want to progress that more. Can you give us a preview of how we're progressing? What would be next?
I mean, just moving up the food chain, it's, you know, audio logs, you know, I mean, ultimately we want to get to be able to do video logs, like all that stuff. Because again, like it's, the data pads are great because they're easy, they're relatively cheap. You know, part of the thing with this year has been creating greater engagement. And one of the main methods for doing that is having characters that you're interacting with. And so even if it's a one-sided thing, as far as, you know, an audio logger.
That's the thing. There's not a lot. Like, I think the only time where I actually interacted with something that wasn't myself, I was doing a box delivery mission to this broken station somewhere in Stanton, and I lost my box. But during the time, I saw this panel that let me interact with it. I interacted with it, I pressed F. Then I heard this voice talking about, hey, blah, 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 where are you? You haven't been back. We need to do blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. There's audio coming at me, and I'm hearing audio in this game. And I was like, is this a thing? But then I didn't see it anywhere else in the game where I was getting anything. The only time I've seen it after that was in the trailer for Wicklow, where he's talking to you. You can see him on the screen. I was like, this would be so cool if it spread a lot more and a lot further into Star Citizen. Like, imagine you had audio, like you take a contract and it says, all right, senior contractor, you have to go to this location. There's going to be 5 enemies, but the one you're looking for is in a single-seater crafts. Got to go take him out and report back to us. Something like that. And you're like, oh, crap. Okay, now I'm going to go do this contract. Or, oh, hey, cargo hauler, you're going to have to haul this cargo. We need all this material up to Bajini Point. We are running so low on this, and you have to go do that. Like, that would be so cool to get those little things when you take missions, and it adds a little bit more to that immersion, you know?
Or a video log or something like that. It's still, you're reacting to a person rather than just reading text on screen.
Reading text on screen,
Folks have already seen with Wicklow, comms calls.
Wicklow,
are coming back. You know, you start starting to see some visual comm calls and people being able to talk to you and deliver some exposition. Mm-hmm. Folks who are playing 411 on PTU now know there's elements of that creeping into 411 as well, with some of the new mission content that's available in 411, where we're able to have these comm calls come and talk to you. You know, we do want to make it so it's not just picking up.
You know, I'm gonna definitely be advocating for Chris Roberts. Let me do some audio logs. I will come in, I will record my voice, I will send you the recordings. I got studio mics everywhere. I will literally go into a room that has all my dampeners and I'll record some audio logs for you. You need this voice in Star Citizen, okay?
Things that you have to read. It's things that you can actually listen to and hear to help tell.
That's so much better. Imagine you're flying, you just took the mission, your freaking Moby glass comes down, you're flying and just they're speaking to. Stupendous.
We want to be able to get some of these broadcasts and stuff on screens and landing zones and stuff, and be able to push out story elements to you that you don't have to go and find yourself. So we're committed to trying to make that work this year. We're committed to trying to make audio logs this year and stuff like that, because we are very serious about our desire to tell these stories.
It'll help so much. It'll help so much to tell these things.
I mean,
so
the
much
change
better.
to the new loading screen alone is just giving us a nice opportunity.
If you've been watching my episodes, when they changed the new loading screen when you first log into Star Citizen, I was so impressed by that. The fact that I could read a freaking splash page of everything that was currently going on in the universe. And they changed it twice. The first time they did it with Fight for Pyro, I think. And then they did it for the new Orbital Assault. And I was so impressed by that. That is nice. That is so much better than just seeing a blank screen with a loading at the bottom. That was beautiful. I really enjoy that. Now imagine there's voices with that, and there's voices with things like that. That's just gonna be beautiful.
Opportunity.
Oh, that, yeah.
Oh, just a little bit of narrative. Again, it's text reading, which
but that
maybe
it's
is not as exciting.
so much
but
better.
The branding team has done an amazing job of doing the art for them. And
Yeah,
Things we
making
can do
making
this
it like
year
a
without requiring
newsletter.
too much feature work, without pulling too many resources away from finishing out Squadron 42, and without introducing too much instability into the
the
PU
game, yeah.
and stuff like that. It's like I said, it's all got to be managed. It's all got to be balanced within the whole.
scope of
but
thing,
we are making those. We are making those efforts. Folks, thanks for taking the time to be here,
Always
for
a pleasure,
doing
yeah.
this.
But damn, yeah, I feel like I gave all my opinions while it was going on, but I do like the way that they're keeping to the fact that we're trying to get stability in. And at some points, I didn't really see the vision, but some things I did after it was explained a little bit better. I saw the vision, and the Foxwell thing with the different the way it's gonna ramp up, where you work for this company that's basically an agency, then you get to the big corporations who are like the big dogs of the systems. That's actually a really fun thing. I didn't think of it in that way until he actually mentioned it like that. I do want to see more PvE focused events where people can actually go out and do things in the safety of the game, like on the only thing you have to worry about is someone might have to pirate you, because not a lot of people want to actually do combat all the time. I know a lot of people who just want to haul, they want to salvage, they want to do the small things like that, mining. They don't want to do combat, and having to like be worried about pirates is already so much hassle. So having to actually go out there and do combat, FPS, dogfighting, it's not always the nicest, but this was actually a really, really informative watch. Damn, the road ahead looks beautiful, man. And they're taking this whole thing seriously. The stability is serious. And I feel like people have got to cut them some slack, because they're developing 2 games and they only have so much manpower, And yet they've made a lot of money, but they're developing 2 games, and one of them is a live service game. People forget that at times, that Star Citizens right now is a live service game. That means they need to continuously add things. So the money they've made so far is not that much for a live service game. And how long has it been a live service game? People need to put that all into account when you're talking about Star Citizen, and if it's a fraud and all these kind of things. Like there's ways they have to go about this to make it what it is, especially in alpha where it's still being tested. If you enjoyed this reaction, make sure to like and subscribe. This is really, really interesting. I hope you guys like learned some bits. If you haven't watched it before and you watched it with me, I appreciate that. But don't forget to subscribe to the Star Citizen channel, man. Let's try to get this game to be the greatest game of all time, because it basically already kind of is. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. One game out there does what Star Citizen does. Not a lot of games. Leave your thoughts down below and I'll have some conversation with you guys. And I'll see you guys on the next one.